What's good, DMVSportsZone? This is Noah, and I'm here with a Capitals season recap video. All right, I'm going to admit, my takes didn't age very well. Thought the Capitals had a real chance to win the series, but unfortunately, the Florida Panthers, unfortunately, that was the only accurate take I had. They were ready with a new game plan. They came out much more aggressive, much more heavily rely on their stars. And unfortunately, their stars kind of outweigh ours. Of course, there were a lot more injuries than a lot of people like to admit. But of course, it's no excuse. So what does that mean for the offseason? What does it mean for the future of the Capitals? Let's get into that. And before I do, again, I get all my sports data from Sport AI, where we are optimizing, democratizing that fantasy sports analytics process all through a mobile app. You want more information on the app? Check it out on the App Store, Sport AI, or link in the bio. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Walker tied him out.
You know when you're at the USA Cup, you're taking it slightly. I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act on you gon' be right back. When we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down.
First, obviously, let's talk about the playoff series. They lost to the Florida Panthers in 6 games. Kind of collapsed after that 2-1 lead, but it shouldn't come that much as a surprise. Again, the Panthers were the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. They have the depth, and it really showed through. Our depth didn't show up. And I know a lot of people, first thing is to blame the goaltending, but the goaltending wasn't the huge problem. The good defense that we played, it disappeared after Game 4. After Game 4, they were getting outmatched. Barkov, Huberdeau were just too fast. And that really comes to the question with the age of this team. Our entire core is over 33 years old, which is ancient for any sports standards, let alone the NHL. So real questions are to be had. McLennan and Laviolette, the entire organization, has publicly stated they are going for a youth movement. They have not committed to the rebuild. They want to try to win as long as Ovechkin's here and, interestingly enough, as Backstrom's here. So people may not be aware, but Nicholas Backstrom, obviously our number 2, our Robin to Ovechkin's Batman for over a decade. Unfortunately, Backstrom's trying to slow down a lot compared to Ovechkin. He's 34 years old, but he's been dealing with hip injuries and all sorts of wear and tear injuries past couple seasons. He barely played this year, barely played in the playoffs, and made a huge impact. Came back, you see, he's a lot slower. He's never been a very athletic guy in the first place, relying on his IQ and vision. But because he's been rehabbing so often, you can see some of that IQ even is disappearing. As a result, is he really our number 1 center anymore? No. He's the best number 2, a number 3 on a really elite team. So what does that mean? What are their cap situation? So obviously the major injuries, we had Tom Wilson, Nicholas Backstrom, other players, Carl Hagelin with that eye injury. Honestly, he may retire, kind of like that Brian Berard situation way back, if you remember, for the New York Islanders. He may retire, so that will free up some cap space, but he was a key depth player that we really missed. Ovechkin also openly admitted that he had a shoulder injury that he was fighting through. Yeah, his performances in the playoffs wasn't too bad. 6 points, 5 games, only 1 goal though. Really could hone in on Ovechkin because our depth players were no threat to the Florida Panthers, so that is an unintended consequence. But in terms of the free agents, like I said, Carl Hagelin, if he goes on long-term IR, we'll free up some cap space. We also have Vida Vanacek, Ilya Samsonov, both becoming restricted free agents, that's what I'm saying. This was a risky move, and I really don't understand why trade a second-round pick for Vida Vanacek after you gave him up in the expansion draft. You clearly made it clear that Ilya Samsonov is the future. Samsonov has the first-round pick and a better performer in the playoffs. I think really has a much higher ceiling than Vanacek. Vanacek's a little bit older. He did better in the regular season, but Samsonov long-term does have a lot more potential. Goalies take a long time to develop, so that's no surprise there. But we got to make a decision here, and I think we go Ilya Samsonov and we bring a veteran goalie into the fold We're wasting our time trying to do the same thing we did with Varlamov and Neuwirth many years ago. We got to pick a goalie for the future. Samsonov is younger, has a much higher potential. Honestly, I would suggest trying to get some draft capital back from Vanecek. Still don't really understand why they brought him back. Because if you don't have confidence in Samsonov, then move on. Why bring back Vanecek when he's going to probably be gone this season, or we're going to have to overpay him because he has so much leverage, considering that Samsonov still, I think, has another 2 seasons, even 3 seasons before he becomes an elite goaltender. So Vanecek handcuffing us severely. Hopefully we can try to trade his restricted free agent rights. Unfortunately, he's not going to get the same return as the second-round pick. It's going to have to be a 4th or 5th-round pick. Try to get some draft capital. I don't know how that's going to work. But on the positive side, we have some other free agents. Justin Schultz, I think, ended up being overpaid, paying over $8 million. I mean, he was okay. He's a great two-way defenseman, a great depth defenseman, but you're not paying him that much. It's coming off of his big years for the Oilers and the Penguins. So the Capitals signed him, ended up being a number 2 guy, literally a smaller, excuse my French, crappier version of Carlson, and even Carlson's getting older and struggling as well. So I don't see Justin Schultz returning. He's old, getting older, hasn't been very good. He's not a very strong defender. Yes, he's a right-hand shot, and he's got decent offense. But unless he comes back, on a discounted deal, maybe $3 to $5 million, there's zero reason to bring him back. So Justin Schultz, in my opinion, is gone. Especially they want to commit to that youth movement. That also brings me to the final key. Lars Eller is in the last year of his $17.5 million 5-year deal, and Eller has always been a solid player. Don't get me wrong. He's a good two-way forward, very similar to Schultz. But again, if you're paying him that much money, he is not worth that salary cap. We have to try to trade him on the offseason, especially because we have a lot of rookies that deserve a lot more ice time next season. We had 9 Capitals rookies play this year. Most promising, obviously, Connor McMichael. I really think that he is going to be an excellent player in this league. He needs more minutes. He could easily replace Lars Eller in that third line. There's no reason to keep Eller, especially because he lacks versatility to play a grinder role in the fourth line. He's overpaid at this point. So we can try to trade him for anything. That would be good. He's only one year on his deal. He'd fit a better team. Honestly, that's in a better stage. Maybe Colorado, ironically, even the Panthers. Stanley Cup contender that needs veteran presence. We can easily find some draft capital for him because we need to commit to Connor McMichael. Another player that we need to keep an eye on is Lapierre. Lapierre is our first-round pick from last year. He played okay. I mean, he only had a small cup of coffee in the NHL this year, but obviously first-round capital into him. We need to see what we have with him. I think he's developed enough in the Quebec Junior League as well as in the AHL to get a lot more playing time next season, and we have to develop internally. If we want to commit to the youth movement, it's not just about the draft this year. It's about our first-round picks, our other existing prospects. The other one is obviously Fervery. Fervery, an excellent defenseman. Honestly, for a young player, defensemen, just like goalies, take very long to develop. That's what I'm saying. Schultz leaving, almost guaranteed. Fervery is going to get second-line minutes, maybe even first-line pairing with Carlson next year. We need to see what we have with them. I know it's going to be a lot of pressure to thrust them into a big situation, but we have to commit to the youth movement. And, the GM and the coach, everyone's saying commit. But what does that mean? It means sometimes taking a risk, allowing your established veterans like Schultz and Eller to be traded or walk, and allow players like McMichael, Lapierre, Fervery to get more ice time. Fervery averaged 18 minutes a game, which is solid for a defenseman. See him get around 20 minutes a game next year and really see what we have. Because we can try to fill all the holes we can in the draft, but again, this is not a draft. First of all, it's not a draft class to look like there's that much generational talent deep in the draft. It's going to be standard top heavy. Of course, we can find some steals. Hopefully, we can find some guys that came out of nowhere. But right now, it doesn't look like the Capitals are really poised to do that. We don't have a high draft. We don't have a high chance at a high draft pick this year. So, this is a dangerous place to be in. The Capitals were in that for a long time before their Stanley Cup win in 2018, where they were trying to sign different veterans, different players that didn't work out. We never could get the big free agent to come play with Ovechkin. It was mainly, smaller time guys. Marcus Johansson coming back. I mean, we can re-sign him as a def player if he wants to go for like a cheap deal. But every free agency we always get like some guy like Lars Eller or Carl Hagelin. I mean, these guys are okay, but these are not the big free agent signings that we need. outside of Evgeny Kuznetsov, outside of maybe TJ Oshie and Alex Ovechkin, we don't really have any offensive threat. Like, this is not a team that has good scoring depth. And we really got exposed this series. That was a concern I had. But when everything's clicking, it's going fine. But we're relying on perfect play every single game, which we can't have. The Panthers, at their worst, were losing games to the Capitals. But even when they're playing okay, I mean, let's be honest. Game 5 was a winnable game. Panthers weren't playing that great, and they still won. And that's just a big part of why we don't have any real scoring depth. Our blue line is atrocious right now. I mean, I thought we could have enough. We had enough. Unfortunately, we really got exposed. I mean, no offense to Nick Jensen, but Jensen is a traffic cone, and I don't understand why he's getting so many minutes. Again, we need to commit to the youth movement. Jensen's younger, so he can stay, but we need to give more minutes to Fervery, again, to Lapierre, to McMichael, and just let these guys develop. I mean, we look at having a challenge Chandler Stevenson. He could have been such a valuable asset, and you know why we traded him? Because Lars Eller was taking that third center spot. They didn't want to pay Chandler Stevenson, so he went on to the Golden Knights. Now he's almost a point-per-game player. He's going to be a possible future All-Star on that Golden Knights team, which is absolutely painful to watch. So we have around $20 million overall assigned in cap value, like I mentioned before, to all these different free agents. The only guys that I really think we need to re-sign to a long-term deal is Ilya Samsonov. If Samsonov obviously doesn't want to play, then we have Vanacek as a decent option. But if not, we got to trade his restricted free agent rights away. We can let Schultz walk, overpaid. Try to trade Eller. He's absolutely overpaid. Not a traffic cone level, but definitely not a great player. Or as good as he used to be. Let the rookies play more. And that's all we can do. In terms of major free agents, actually, ironically, some of the Florida Panthers may have some interesting players coming out. Anthony Duclair is a great scoring winger that could thrive on a faster-paced Capitals team, because I really think that Anthony Mantha was a mistake for the Capitals. He doesn't fit very well. They kind of thought he could be like a Tom Wilson with more scoring touch, but man, he is so slow. He doesn't fit the team well. This is not the early 2000s dead puck era. Anthony Mantha would have been a star then. He's not now. He's kind of, I know, he reminds me a little bit of Jake Virtanen, who was an absolute draft bust for the Canucks. Mantha's not to that level, but he hasn't improved at all. Like, he hasn't gotten any better, even from the analytics side to the eye test. He doesn't make much of an impact, even though he's getting a lot of minutes and has all the potential in the world, yet he fails to deliver every single time. That was one of our trades where we hoped that, add some youth, maybe get a steal. Hasn't worked out so far, but yeah, I mean, it's just no words. I'm really disappointed in the Capitals. Of course, the Panthers are the favorite to win the Cup, but I expected a better fight than that. I mean, we won the first. We were up 2-1 in the series. Then we kind of collapsed the other 3 games. So I mean, there's no excuse. We have to decide if we're going to rebuild or not. But in this case, they've only committed to the youth movement and not a rebuild, which makes sense. We do have enough talent in the current system to not justify a rebuild. I think it would be foolish to absolutely blow up the team. But we want to slowly reload over time. Ovechkin, like I said, Backstrom, they're getting really old. Carlson's getting old. So slowly easing the new rookies, and we can hopefully sign a big free agent or two this summer. Like I said, an Anthony Duclair. Maybe make a trade for a disgruntled player. Heck, maybe a Matthew Barzal from the New York Islanders. He's a superstar. Might acquire a lot of trade value. But we could see what happens there. Maybe trade Vanacek. I mean, they already have a good goaltender there. So wherever we can find a good, second line, third line center, I think that's what we really need. Our center depth is not good. We keep rotating Kuznetsov and Oshie to the wings, the center. We can't do that. We need to have a committed second-line center, committed third-line center. We want to be a good team in the future. So, yeah, that's pretty much a recap for the Capitals right now in the playoffs and their offseason. But hopefully some good news comes from the draft and throughout the summer. So, Capitals fans, thank you for sticking with DMV Sports Zone and, my kind of takes. Some are really good, some are bad. But that's life. So if you guys want to, stay tuned and learn more about the Capitals and keep up to date with all the DC sports news, again, DMV Sports Zone. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And, what are your thoughts? I want to know what people are thinking about the Capital state right now. I know it's not all bad. Like I said, there's some positives. We do have a lot of good prospects in the line. It's just about getting them ice time. Sometimes we just got to be not afraid and let them develop. We see a lot of young players break out in other teams around the league. It's time to see a good rookie or second, third-year player on the Capitals do well for once. So